Hello friends and welcome to another tips video. This time it's in Crusader Kings 3 with the aim of helping folks that are beginners or intermediate at the game. First of all, though, introductions. My name is Kyle or theRandolfski and I am primarily a Twitch streamer who's trying his hand at the YouTubes. I have untold hours in Crusader Kings 2 and over 200 in Crusader Kings 3, and the following are my experiences as well as some of my community's thoughts on tips and wee tidbits of information to remember whilst playing. So let's dive in. A super simple feature that I really should start off by showing is the search function down here. Utilise it and use it as often as you can for everything that you think it can be used for. However, one of the biggest standout tips I can offer in this game is simple. If a character doesn't like you, don't just accept it. Hover over that green or orange or even red number and find out why. There could be something simple you can do that could make their frown turn upside down. Something as simple as giving them a minor title, a job in your court, maybe, not banging their partner over and over again, even a seat in the council, which brings me to another tip. In an ideal world, council seats would be selected on skill alone, but sadly that is not possible. It is often easier to choose your highest skill in each field. For example, High Marshal becomes, well, your Marshal, but sometimes depending on your tier of titles, there can be Vassals of Count / Duke or even King tier who sadly must be prioritised as it gives them a large opinion modifier for being either seated or not on the council. The other thing in this regard is make sure your councillors like you. So that old red, orange, green number really does have to be green, especially in the case of your Spymaster. If your Spymaster doesn't like you, you are in very danger. They are the key defence and key weakness in any scheme against you, so keep them on side and do not be afraid to fire and replace. In my opinion, it's worth upsetting for safety. Managing your vassals is something that we often neglect as well. What do I mean by that? Having vassals that are counts as a king isn't ideal, and the same as an emperor. You want to have as few vassals as possible of a lower title, as it is easier to keep fewer happy, meaning less revolts and resistance to your schemes, plots and wars. Which moves on to my next point, prestige. Prestige can be collected and even farmed to an extent through in-game events. However, one thing that can get you prestige quickly if you have a good income of gold is the creating of titles. They can offer hundreds of prestige and double up by allowing you to offer a new title to someone getting that nice opinion buff, whilst lessening the amount of quarrelsome vassals under you. Less vassals, less problems. Speaking of vassals, we have the option of vassalising your heir, aka giving them land before your death. This has pros and cons. A pro is that they will start to forge their own path. Gather prestige, gold, maybe some new titles, renown, working on their personal growth and development. However, the cons are they can do stupid stuff. Lose a silly jewel and part ways with an eye, leg, or maybe even their life. Start relations with a character who's undeserving of your family name. You never know. Always weigh up these outcomes when choosing to land. Inheritance is the next thing we will discuss. Depending on your favoured religion to play as, and even your start year, the solutions differ here. You can within specific titles from Duke to King to Emperor change the inheritance law, like so. Please note that you will have to do this for each tier of title. It's not a case of one covers all scenario. Alternatively, if you reform certain religions, you can select to go along different types of inheritance, as well as simply culling off those on the line to inherit by trimming the herd, or choose a different system in the development of your culture should you accrue enough prestige. In terms of expansion, there are many wee things you can implement to allow your land to expand either through your own hand or using your vassals. If, for example, you are looking for quick expansion, it can be worth investing a little in the Marshal tree and taking the path that gives you discounted Casus Belli. It is one of the first up here. This can make declaring wars a lot more cost effective and can mean that declaring for a duchy or even a kingdom is a far more reasonable prestige cost. When you take over a new holding, first think, what do you want from the person you give it to? Do you want someone to keep declaring war in that area? Maybe choose an ambitious individual, a raffle character? Are you looking for someone to sit quietly and just be happy with their position? Go with content. Is it on a religious frontier where you seek expansion? Choose zealous. Zealous characters essentially hate all other religions, increasing their likelihood of declaring war. All of the modifiers that come with these traits impact the character behaviour and desires. When it comes to your family members and children, always remember to marry your heir to someone who's going to help them succeed. Think of them as your source of strength. Marry them to the best character. Try to make sure they end up with the best land and titles. Their brothers or sisters or siblings or family members you want to marry off for alliances that will either protect you from being attacked due to overall troop numbers, which the AI includes when they're choosing whether or not to declare war. It's terrible to say, but think of them almost as bargaining chips. You can sort of guide the inheritance at times by giving your other children and relatives titles, keeping the stronger ones in your grasp until your character parts the world. Also, this is my personal opinion, but don't be afraid to marry some of the female characters in your family, matrinally. That's a word I always struggle to say. It means more characters of your dynasty can be rulers and can end up being landed in places you don't expect. Alternatively, if you live in a time of danger and have a scary neighbour, why not swear allegiance to a neighbour and gain that umbrella of protection? You can always scheme to leave or even take control from the inside. Why not marry into your enemies and turn their frown upside down? Having an enemy that literally cannot attack you through alliance is the safest way to maintain your independence. Also note that betrothals can always be broken with very little side effects. Children are the future of your dynasty. Always make sure to educate your children with the best possible guardian. If you want to really forge their future, do it yourself. If there is someone with more fitting traits, choose them. Scholars are always great, as are close family members of the same culture and religion as you. Remember, children can be susceptible to the culture of their tutor, so consider that at all times. Militarily, don't be afraid to change your rally points. I honestly tend to have one point I move around and use to raise my troops each time war breaks out. Don't be afraid to pause the game and take your time. Try to note how long it will take your army to raise, and don't always deploy straight next to the front line. Sometimes letting the enemy attrition can be the best move, especially in an evenly matched war. Before any large battle, look at your army's commander. Sometimes, depending on the terrain you're fighting, you can appoint someone who will provide bonuses, such as a relevant terrain expert, or when you're laying siege, look for someone with a military education or a trait that can modify you in the relevant situation. Please also do not forget that your counsellors can carry out very important tasks. Always look into these and utilise them at all times. If they are getting a wage, have them working to further the realm. Remember that your holy courtier, who you normally cannot choose, can actually go out and try to get you claims on land. Use this in your downtime between wars if you wish to expand. This brings me to my favourite piece of advice I can offer. It's not so much advice, more of a suggestion. With this being a paradox game, it's easy to get lost in the map painting exercise that it can become. Do yourself a favour and try the approach I have adopted lately of playing the character and not the game. Use your character's traits as an indicator on what decisions to take. Don't metagame and always choose the best decision. It can be so much more rewarding and fulfilling and breathe fresh life into a game that can be min-maxed to a joy-breaking degree. I could probably talk on here, but this seems like a nice mix of tips and general advice. If you have enjoyed the video, I appreciate any support here on YouTube. There will be a link in the description to my Twitch channel, which is where I primarily produce content, and if you wish to be involved even further, there is a link to our Discord below. I do actually currently have a Crusader Kings 3 modded playthrough running, in which we play as a lost Roman legion who have found themselves in India under the rulership of the Randolfski dynasty. Alternatively, if you are thinking of buying Crusader Kings 3 itself, or even any of the DLC, you can support the channel indirectly by purchasing it through my CD keys link, which, guess again, is in the description. If you do have any further useful tips or tricks, please leave them in a comment, and I might do a further video on this if this proves to be popular. There's not much more to say at this point other than goodbye for now, and stay safe.